Welcome to the Community Warehouse. This is Imran Nanlawala, and I'm once again joined by my esteemed co-host Habib Qadri. Habib, how you doing?
Doing well, doing well. Good to see you.
Awesome. I think we're both excited about today's guest. I know she's very involved in your local community and has done a lot for the community. And so I just wanted to give a quick introduction before we bring her on. Today we have the honor of having Dr. Nour Akhras, who is a pediatric infectious disease physician, one of only 1,500 in the United States. She's written a new book called Just One, A Journey of Perseverance and Conviction, which is number one on various Amazon on the Amazon website. And it is a chronicle of the life of her, a Syrian American doctor, honestly portraying her struggles as an American Muslim in an Islamophobic climate, as a mother providing humanitarian aid in war-torn countries around the globe. Throughout her journey, she takes the inspiration from the extraordinary courage of young and old refugees forced to abandon their homes, yet determined to survive and rebuild their lives. Each story is different, and every loss is personal. Between heartbreaking realities and moments of resilience, she implores readers to respect the dignity of every human life. So it's going to be a very, I think, deep episode. There's just so much in that description, so many different angles to cover. So before we bring her on, is there anything that you want to add to the intro?
Hey, and you know what's also amazing is that she's mashallah for anyone who's non-Muslim, but she's also a hafiza, so an individual
Awesome.
who has memorized the Holy Quran, so more than 6,000 verses. But she's also did, mashallah, when she was so young. But then I know she took some time off. I don't know if it was in college or after college or before medical school. So mashallah, just an amazing individual with many talents. Allah put barakah in her life and protect her and guide her and bless her family, inshallah. And we're really excited to have her today. So let's begin.
All right. Without further ado, Dr. Akhras.
Hey guys, Assalamu alaikum. I just wanted to clarify, I'm not a hafidha, so I did complete a lot of the Quran, but never completed the full Quran. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Oh, okay. But I know it's close because some
Yeah.
people. So may Allah make.
Oh yeah.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. One
I
day.
see that you do have ijaza in tajweed, correct?
Yes, I do.
From
That was
Sheikh
that was between medical school and residency. I had some time off, a couple of months. Yeah.
So we wanted to get straight into it, Dr. Akhras. Obviously, before we get into the book, you're only one of 1,500 pediatric infectious disease doctors, physicians. How did you get into infectious medicine? Why did you get into infectious medicine? How did that come about?
So, I did my pediatric training at first, and, I really love kids. And so I think one of the things why you don't understand why there's only 1,500 of us is because there's no money in this specialty. So nobody wants to go into it. We don't do any procedures. It's a lot of like cerebral thinking. And so because there's not a lot of procedures, we can't bill as much. And so we don't make a lot of money. But anyways, I actually was a microbiology major. I majored in cellular and molecular biology in college. And then I did some research in an E. coli lab. And then I did my pediatric residency. And I went into infectious diseases just because most of pediatrics is infectious diseases. So most children who get hospitalized are hospitalized because of infection. And then also because it's just infections affect every organ of the body. So it just was like really broad and really specific at the same time. And so that's how I kind of ended up as an infectious disease specialist.
Well, you were the most popular doctor about a few years ago, all you infectious diseases doctors at COVID. So
Right.
I know she was busy at that time. We could have interviewed her then too.
No, I did. I think I was probably one of the first interviews. We actually went to her house and we set it up right away, and it was actually quite engaging. A lot of questions came in. So no, mashallah, she's been very gracious with her time multiple times.
Mashallah. Awesome.
Yeah, I remember that interview. You're right. I was telling my husband the other day that Imran is like a guy ahead of his times because he was, in fact, the first interview I did. I did a lot of interviews after that and a lot of different podcasts and stuff, but you were the first one. We weren't even masking, if you remember, when you came to my house.
Correct.
Remember?
It was very early on. I don't think there were a lot of the rules and even knowledge of the virus were not there yet.
Yeah, that's right.
I think at that time we were talking about there were questions coming in. Can I smoke? Can I keep smoking? There were a lot of interesting questions coming in the comments.
Yeah.
So another thing, so Habib, I'll let you get the next one. But one thing that that is very, I think to a lot of people will be mind-boggling. It's hard enough to be a doctor, to go to medical school, get through that year one, get through all the exams. But you are one of 1,500. You just went into it. Obviously, it's not for the love of the money. It's for the work, the services. Most people would be content, especially from our culture. Most people would be content being just a doctor. But you're writing books. You're granting interviews. And I have to admit, and now, it's not good for me to admit something like this, but you've never asked us to pay you. You've never asked us for an honorarium. And I always use that as a measuring stick. But also and we're going to get into this when we cover the book, you're going across the globe to help people who really have been displaced, people who need help. So again, similar question, why all of these things? What is the impetus? What is the motivation that makes you want to constantly be busy?
I don't know. I don't think of it as like the broad spectrum, I guess. I take it like one project at a time. And if you read the book, you see like the first mission that I went on was it was just impromptu. I was at an iftar and Dr. Sahlul happened to invite me. But that mission really changed my life. It changed the trajectory of my life, and like being there and like seeing people who I could have been, or they could have been me, or, I think one of the things that we think of as Americans is like, oh, those problems are over there and that's never going to happen to me. And, those people in the Middle East are always fighting with each other, or wherever they are, they're always fighting with each other. And, that's just absolutely not true, because if you speak to different people who are in wars, like even if you speak to the Ukrainians, if you spoke to them January 2022, even though there was so much saber rattling from the Russians, and actually I'm about to publish an article about that very thing. It's going to come out probably tomorrow or the next day. But there was so much saber rattling, and the Ukrainians did not expect a war in their country, and so they were so shocked by it. Even though we had been hearing about it on NPR, or if you're listening to the news. And if you think about the Bosnians, the same thing. Like I remember the Bosnian War when I was 15 and it broke out. You speak to Bosnians and they'll say, "Oh my God, those Serbians, they were our neighbors. We shared meals with them. We were neighbors with them, that they would have never expected a war." And then same thing in Syria before March 2011. I mean, my uncle was here in February 2011. My uncle was like 70 years old, who's been in Syria. He's over 70. He's been in Syria his whole life. He's an obstetrician gynecologist. He came here a couple of years for residency, and he was here visiting. He has some children here. And I said, "Hello, do you think the Arab Spring is coming to Syria?" He's like, "No way, absolutely not." Even the Syrian president himself thought that there's no way that a war would come to his country. So I think that, one of the take home points from my experience is like, we are not any different than people who are in a refugee status. And to think that that could never happen to us. I mean, look at January 6th. How close did we come to a civil war in this country? And so I just think, like, I always think, like, if I was in a refugee camp with my little kids, I would hope somebody would come help me. And so, even when I was in Greece, that was the same thing. Like, the impetus for me to go to Greece was because I saw, and I'm sorry, the whole world saw the little body of Aylan Kurdi, the 3-year-old little Syrian boy whose body washed up on a Turkish shore. And just the day before that, I was running after my 2-year-old son, who was running after a squirrel, and I posted a picture of him on social media. And then the next day, this image of this little 3-year-old was like all over the place. And I'm like, that could have been me. That could have been me. And that could have been my 2-year-old little boy. So, so that's that part. But then the part about the book, like how that happened, that was like, I never dreamed I'd be an author. That was never something I thought about. But I had an experience in 2019 where I just saw the power of storytelling. And I met Mukhtar Al-Khanshali. I don't know if you guys know him, but he's a Yemeni American coffee entrepreneur. So in 2018, in the summer of 2018, I traveled to California. I had just had a baby, and I was visiting a friend in the summer of 2018. She lived in California. She introduced me to this man, Mukhtar, and we just got to talking. And he was like, "Oh yeah, I was recently in Yemen, and I hightailed it out of Yemen because the war started." And I was like, "Oh, I just hightailed it out of Yemen too." And so we just, we bonded over the war in Yemen, and he's actually a Yemeni American. And then a year after that, a book was published by Dave Eggers, who's a famous author. I'm sure you've heard of him. He's written about Katrina. He's written about the Lost Boys of Sudan. So he also wrote a book about Mukhtar and his coffee entrepreneurship and the history of coffee that came from Yemen. And the book is called The Monk of Mocha. And so in March of 2019, Mukhtar and Dave Eggers were doing a book tour, and they came to Chicago. And I told my husband, I'm like, oh, I know this guy. I met this guy. Let's go to this book signing event. So we went, and it was like in this poshy downtown, place. And all of these older white American people come to this, book signing event, reading about coffee. And I'm like, oh my God, these people would have probably never identified Yemen on a map had it not been for this book, And then here's this guy talking about Yemen and Yemeni culture and Yemeni history and the war in Yemen and all that. So that's really when I thought, okay, to put Syria back on the map, maybe we need to humanize that story. And so I thought I would write an essay. And then I just kept writing and writing and writing and writing and writing. And then, like shocking to myself, before anybody else, it became this 200-page book. And so it was just really, again, to humanize the Syrian story, the Syrian refugee story, because I just feel like it just keeps like flashing. It's like a flash in the pan on the news, like we hear about Syria and then it goes away, and then chemical weapons are used, so we hear about it a little bit and then it goes away. Like, people don't really care too much. The refugee crisis, then we don't hear about it. And even a 7.8 magnitude earthquake that hit Syria and Turkey at the beginning of February. So we heard about Syria for like a couple of weeks, and now it's like the news cycle moves on and people move on. And we just hit the 12th anniversary of the Syrian revolution just yesterday. And so maybe we'll hear about it a little bit again, but just, it's like, it seems like there's no end in sight to this refugee crisis if there's not a political solution. And I just feel like we just got to keep talking about it until these people can go home in a safe way.
So, and really, it's great to see that what the storytelling can do. It can really open up individuals' eyes and people's eyes throughout the world. When you even thought of just when you wrote the book, you had to think of the title. So what was the thought process of picking that title? Just one.
Yes, so you have to read to the end of the book to get to the reason, and that's one of the reasons I don't really talk about it, because I want you to keep reading, and then when you get to the end of the book, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But part of it is just thinking about like what you can do as just one individual to change somebody's life or a group of people's lives. So I think we always underestimate, like, oh, I'm just one person. What's that gonna do? I can't do anything. But I think that that's not true. And I think if you limit yourself in that way, yes, you're not going to do anything. But if you think, hey, I'm one person, maybe I can change something, then you will like push yourself to do something. Like all of us can do something. Like we can write a letter to our government official, we can pray, we can send donations, we can befriend a refugee. There's a lot of things that we can do. But I think we underestimate our ability because we think, oh, I'm just one person. What's one person going to do? It's not going to change anything,
Something you mentioned earlier, which was interesting, was about you were talking about your child chasing a squirrel, and then you had the incident that happened, and it puts things in perspective. So I remember years ago I was overseas in a country where people who have the same ethnic background that I have or the same complexion that I have are the workers, the street workers, the sanitation people. So I had another friend of mine who's Bangladeshi, and he said, he's like we're driving, it's Ramadan, and he just made like a very deep statement. He said, bro, he said, in another lifetime, that's those two workers, that's me and you, right? And it just put things in perspective in terms of obviously in English we would say fortune, but from a faith-based perspective, we believe in destiny. We believe that everything that happens is supposed to happen for a reason. So my question to you is, you wrote this book, you interviewed, you met with refugees from Greece, in Turkey, from Syria. What are some of the impacts that it had on you? What are some of the amazing things that it put in perspective for you?
Yeah, I mean, I say this too, like, if you believe in God, then you do believe that, that nothing happened by accident and everyone was destined to be where they are. But at the same time, it's like I say, no, there's nothing that I did. There's nothing that merited me being here in a secure, safe place. So it's nothing that I did. Like God put me here, or if you don't believe in God, then your circumstances put you here, whatever put you here. But it's not like it's not like something I did that was made me so, great that I earned the right to be in a secure, safe place. Like there's people in Syria or in refugee camps who are smarter than me, who are more religious than me, who are more giving than me. And they're there and I'm here. And so for whatever reason, that's how it is. But it's like, it's exactly what your friend said, that there's no rhyme or reason that we understand or we can pinpoint. But that just makes it more responsibility on us. Like everything is a test. Like you're either tested with loss or you're tested with a lot, and God's going to ask you, or we believe that he's going to ask you that, what did you do with that? What did you do with the education I gave you? What did you do with the I gave you security. What did you do with it? I gave you safety. What did you do with it? I gave you a drink of water. What did you do with it? And then I showed you these people that buildings are falling on them, that they've been displaced once, twice, 20 times. Some Syrian families have been displaced over 20 times in the last 11 years. So imagine you're born in 2010 or 2011, and 12 years of your life you haven't lived in the same place for a year. Like, what does that do to a child? So it's just like that kept just ringing true for me with every family that I met. Like, there's no reason that I'm not there and they're not here in my place.
Go ahead, Imran.
So one more, Habib. So now you're doing your missions. You're getting a first taste of experience of what everybody's going through. I'm sure there's some emotional moments. I'm sure there's some reflection. You come back. You're back in the first world. You land. You go home. And I'm not saying your home as opposed to anybody else's home, but refrigerators, beautiful leather couches, as we see. Amazing food. So how does that perspective change, and how do you go back to what we would say is our reality?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I think that was one of the most shocking things. Like, I knew it was going to be hard being there, but I didn't realize how hard it was going to be to come back to some sort of like normalcy. That I don't know, the first couple of weeks, it's really hard, and a lot of people have existential crises, and I'm thankful that I have a job that's like a job of serving people, because I feel like if I had I don't know, some job that was like, I don't know, if I was just like a home designer or, something that wasn't serving other human beings, I think it would be, I know people who have had existential crises coming back from these experiences. Like, we had a translator with us who was in Greece, who was Moroccan, and he was in the financial sector and he was doing really well. He lived in Sweden or Switzerland or one of those countries, and he was like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing with my life? And he kept extending his trip longer and longer, because he couldn't imagine being among these people for a week or two and then going back to his normal. So that's really hard. And I do caution people who are going on their first mission that you need to give yourself grace when you come back, because you're going to feel like, what the heck is this? Or, normal conversations will no longer be normal. Like, if somebody asks you like, oh, should I buy this blue dress or this red dress? You're going to be like, what? Like, that's how you feel. Like I was just talking to a guy whose leg was amputated, and you want me to tell you like the blue dress looks nice? It's a really weird experience. But thankfully that feeling fades, over time, and you feel sad that it fades, because that feeling makes you want to do more, but at the same time it incapacitates you. So thankfully it fades over time. But a lot of times there's things that still trigger, like stories or things that remind me of my experiences. They'll still trigger me and I'll get emotional. Like, even it's been, since my first trip, it's been 12 years. Yeah. And even when I was editing or like talking to my publisher in the last 6 months, I'll still cry. And I'm like, gosh darn it, like every time I talk about a specific story, I will still cry. And it's just unbelievable, because it's been 12 years. So it's hard. It is hard to kind of reacclimate to some sort of reality. But alhamdulillah, thank God that that feeling doesn't, that feeling fades, and thank God for forgetfulness, because if you didn't forget your biggest grief, like, you couldn't go on.
And subhanAllah, it's the perspective and the mindset on both sides, right? So when is it coming back? But even going there, because when you in the book, you're going into places. Now, I've had the opportunity to go to some third world countries where even one or two places I just had to Zoom, right, or Skype, to working with educators. But you're in some areas where they're just even getting to the place, right, to the refugee camp, is there's the safety, and I think having kids who are still young, that challenge, mashallah, one is going there and getting there safe, and then helping the individuals and coming back, but also knowing that you have your own kids at home. So I mean, subhanallah, just the what one of the things we always want to do in these is just to like learn from these individuals like you, like what's the mindset, like how do you kind of with and anything, when you do good, there's always going to be forces, right? From a spiritual standpoint, you could say you might have the what's up, like, why are we doing this? Just send the check, that's enough, right? So just
Yeah.
wanted to get your the mindset of mashallah, of you going there, realizing that even just getting where you want to go for the right intentions can also be a story itself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I pray a lot of istikhara, and for those of you who don't know what istikhara is, this it's a prayer that Muslims do, and you basically ask God that if this is good for me, make it easy for me, and if it's not good for me, then like block it, And so by blocking it means like your flight gets canceled or your passport gets lost. I mean, I've had trips that I swear to God, like I was like, oh, 100%, I'm going on this trip, and then I can't find my passport, and I ransacked the house over and over and can't find the passport. I'm like, okay, this is a God given sign. So I pray a lot of istikhara before I do any of these things. And I trust the process of asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about these things. And then I also, I also believe, like, we believe that there's a divine decree of when I'm going to die. So if I'm going to die at 50, or I'm going to die at 43 or 37, if I could be sitting here, I'm going to have a heart attack and die, or I'm going to be in a war zone and have a heart attack and die, or get, hit by a missile or whatever. So there's that, that kind of helps with that. And then obviously having a supportive family. Like I could never have done any of what I'd done without my husband being supportive, being able to like care for the children, my in-laws, my parents, my sister, all of these people, my au pairs, everyone who's lived with me. I've had a lot of young women living with me, helping me while I work, and so these women have also helped me while I've helped my husband take care of the kids while I've traveled. So it's a lot. It's a lot of different factors. It's not just like me. I'm not just one individual that's like, oh, okay, see you later, and then there's a lot of other factors involved who have supported me, who've helped me do what I've done, and so it's not just an individual decision.
So just to give everybody a heads up, we've shared the link to the book in the comments. So please do take a look at the book. And obviously, we're still going with the interview, a couple more questions, but just want to make sure everybody knows that. So for me, Dr. Nour, one of the questions is, this is like what your experiences are so intertwined with faith, politics, being a humanitarian, refugee crisis. So as an American and as a Muslim, someone who's also learned in Islam, two questions in one. What are some things Americans, like the everyday American who has no knowledge of foreign affairs or things that are going on outside of North America, what can they learn from your experiences and from your book? And then specifically, when it comes to everything that's happened to Muslims, like say past and post 9/11, what are some of the other takeaways that they can learn?
I mean, I think the first takeaway is to like read foreign affairs, politics, read history, and I think the biggest one for me, even for myself, was that this could happen to us. Like, don't think that it can't happen to us, because it can. Because one day we could be packing our bags and trying to walk to Mexico, And I gave, I did something at the kids' school the other day. And I told them the same thing. And I said, I say Mexico and not Canada, because Mexico is a country where we may not speak the language like Canada will speak English. But Syrians have walked into Turkey where they don't speak the language, have walked to Greece, walked to Germany, Belgium, all of these countries where they don't speak the language. So I think the number one thing is, don't think this can't happen to you, because it can. Like, again, I like January 6th, it blows my mind. We were probably so close to a civil war. I don't know, maybe we weren't, but it just seems like we could have been. And, and talking to people from different countries who have experienced civil war and just never thought it would happen to them. So I think that's the number one thing. In terms of like Islamophobia, Muslims post 9/11, I just read the other day that the United Nations had posted something about March 15th being anti-Islamophobia Day. Did you read this? I don't know if anybody read this, but I think March 15th was the anniversary of the Christchurch shooting. So they had said something about Islamophobia being such a global pandemic, they called it. And in the book I talk about like how I'm just so tired of having to defend Muslims, and I'm so tired of like I don't hear any right-wing people defending their, people who are going into mosques, shooting up people, or going into synagogues, or going into churches, or going into Walmart and shooting up like Hispanic people, or going into, you know what I'm saying? Like there's all of these right-wing extremists who are going into different places and shooting up people. And I don't hear anybody being like, oh, I'm going to apologize on behalf of all of my fellow right-wing extremists. Nobody's saying that. So it's like, I've experienced so much Islamophobia, like I talk about it in the book. I was a subject of an FBI interrogation when I was in medical school, in residency. I was on some weird no-fly list. Not that, no, I could fly, but every time I would fly, I would, be picked up by Customs and Border Patrol for no reason. And the same way I just got on the list for no reason, my name got off the list for no reason. It's not like I did something, like it just, whatever, I don't know, whatever happened, it just happened. But there's just been so much discrimination and hate against Muslims in the last 2 decades. 2 decades since 2001, and it's just it's getting old. So it's like, just talk to a Muslim. There's a lot of us in this country. There's a lot of us all over the world. Most of us are upright human beings. And in just like in any other religion, any other ethnic background, any other race, there's, bad apples everywhere, but it's not tied to our religion. It's just, that's just the way it is. And so I just think like, talk to your fellow Muslims. Like you'd be surprised what you find out about them.
I know it's almost coming to the 30 minutes here, but just wanted to end with this. One is, with the book, but I know one of the other aspects is like not everyone might be able to go overseas to, and help out. But I know that sometimes we do have refugees that do come to our communities. And I know for you, I know yourself personally and your family and extended family have helped in that process. So what is something for us individuals and say, hey, like, if we know that there's some refugees in our community, what would be like 2-3 things that you think would really be very helpful? One, no doubt about it, maybe from a financial perspective, but sometimes not always about finances, other factors. I know you've, mashallah, have gone and, visited, dropped off food in Ramadan to try to set up houses and places. So I just thought if you could just kind of end with some things that maybe even for individuals who might find out that there are going to be some refugees from various areas, countries that might, come into our community, some tips and suggestions for to the listeners here.
Yeah. So, I mean, just befriending a family of refugees, like, I think that's so helpful. Imagine yourself going to a foreign country, not knowing anybody, not knowing the system, not knowing anything. Okay, for example, today I worked at a new hospital that I've never worked at before. And I didn't know the computer system, and I didn't know where I was going. And it was like completely lost all the time. And it just took forever. Everything took forever because I didn't know the system. So just imagine, like, if you just befriend a family like that and just like show them around, show them how the CTA works, show them how the bus works, show them how the metro works, show them how to open their mail, where the mail goes, just all of these little things that we take for granted that we know because we've lived here our whole lives. All of these little things, like if you show somebody that's really helpful, or show them where they can sign up for English classes, how they can enroll in the library, get a library card. There's so many things that you can show a refugee family will really make their life easier. Invite them over for dinner. If they have kids, your kids play with their kids if they have the same age kids. Like, also as parents, like that would make such a difference. That like, how relieved would you feel if your kids had some friends that they felt comfortable with and things like that. Take them to the masjid if they don't know where it is. Like, just a lot of little things that you can do that will really make it easy for somebody to acclimate into the United States. So I did that for one family a while ago, just kind of helped them like navigate. I gave them ideas of like what the wife could, do for a living, just different things, like just, think about your everyday life, think about what you need, what you do on a daily basis, and show somebody how to do that. And then like Syrian Community Network is a refugee organization here in Chicago. It's actually started by my cousin Suzanne, and they're always looking for like after school tutors, people who want to do something with after school with the kids, volunteering to paint with them or just do like kid activities. In the beginning, they were looking for like car seats and things that, refugee families could use. Employing a refugee, if you have a job, if you have a business, that you can employ somebody, like what there's that hadith that that the Prophet ﷺ says that if you fix a problem for somebody in this life, then Allah will fix a problem for you on the Day of Judgment. Like imagine that coming back to you on the Day of Judgment, that you employed somebody. Like what a big deal that is for that family, and that comes back to you on the Day of Judgment. So those are a few things that people can do. That those are like easy, just day-to-day things that we can do to help refugees acclimate more to this country.
I want to thank you, Dr. Nour. It was extremely beneficial. I definitely recommend everyone to get the book. And as always, we learn a lot from you. So may the Most High preserve you. And Habib, I'll let you close this out.
Again, Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much, Dr. Akhras, for your time and effort for the community here and overseas. And Allah accept your work and increase you in health, wealth, knowledge, and iman in this world, and also in the hereafter and your family. Thank you for your time. I know you've had a long day, and we really appreciate you sharing. And please all support the book, buy the book, and thank you for opening up our eyes to what's happening.
Here it is. Here it is. If you don't see the copy of it, it's this image is. I looked through 1,000 images to find this image, and it's a UNHCR image. And I just think it just came out so beautifully. It's not like a picture I took or anything, but yeah, please support the book. And if you like the message and you read the book, please do a review on Amazon or Goodreads and spread the word to your friends and family. And a portion of the proceeds from the book goes to Med Global. Med Global is a local an international NGO that's on the ground in Syria and Turkey, who's been there before the earthquakes, giving life-sustaining and life-saving medical supplies to refugees and displaced people in Syria. So if you like the message, buy a book for your friend and your cousin and your uncle and all of your friends, and hopefully some of the profit will go to Med Global.
And the link is where we got that on the link? Yes.
Yeah, it's in the comment section for all of our streams, and we'll also put it in the LinkedIn after the video is up already. So we'll have the link. Please do give it, grab the book, grab it for your friends, and do give a review on Amazon. And thank you again, Dr. Nour.
Thank you so much, you guys.
All right.